Father in heaven, we thank you again that we can come together on this beautiful day. We thank you for the bodies that you have made. And Lord, we thank you for your principles that are in the Bible that you have given us. We thank you for the modern day help that we have received through the spirit of prophecy. We take this seriously. We ask that the Holy Spirit will guide us today, that we will be looking from our own step, our own perspective, not in order to judge somebody else. So we ask your blessings in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, I mentioned this morning that we would be looking at 8 secrets to better health. Now, I will tell you that in your folder, and you will use those folders, normally I like to have us in a room where there's tables. Obviously, that wouldn't work here, so it makes it more difficult for you to hold the folders and look through things. But anyway, and you've got in that folder a number of things. We're going to try to follow the order of the things. So, but on the right-hand side of your folder, you'll see something that says 8 secrets to better health. That's what you need to take out at this point. On that right-hand side, it's not necessarily, well, let me just make reference to this. This sheet is just, well, we did 2-minute excerpts, I think 8 or 9 at the beginning of the year, of people who could help us in various areas, such as Scott Arrington on here. Scott is responsible and is an expert, well-trained at doing gardening. And some churches in our conference are starting to work toward gardening. I just came back from the NAD, and in California, they have like hundreds of churches doing gardening. And of course, they have different kind of weather than we do. But gardening for products for the community is something that's really growing. But anyway, that's what this sheet is, but that's the only reference I'm really going to make to that. So if you'll take out the 8 secrets to better health, let me just say this. Everything that we're covering is in this folder. So for a handout, so you do not really have to take notes unless you just want to do it for the fun of it or to stay awake. Okay? And so anyway, what we're going to do is look at the New Start acronym. We'll do the best we can to just cover some of the basic facts. Obviously, you could bring a nutritionist in here and spend the whole week covering nutrition. You know, I had a speaker with me one time in a church, and he spent the whole, maybe 2 hours, talking about tellurium. You know, well, we could focus on anything, but what I do is try to show you an overview, a general approach. To me, it's more important to cover generally and get your interest in areas where you need to study. Then you can do your own on the internet or whatever. Do you understand what I'm saying? So thus, don't expect me to go into deep details on vitamin D. You know, Minerva can invite somebody in who can spend all afternoon on vitamin D. And y'all might want to sit, you know, to make sure you can see the screen. I don't want, that's okay right here. I think you're okay right here. And so I want to make sure you understand that part of it. And like I said, the only diseases we'll really concentrate on a little bit will be cardiovascular and diabetes in respect to what we're covering, okay? So, having said that, we'll start off, and I'll have some different people maybe read, such as some of my friends here on the front row maybe, or somebody else that would like to read this text from 3 John 2. What does it tell us? Don't be bashful.
Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth.
So God wants us to be, He wants us to be healthy. Amen. You know, and I think it's interesting that it says, even as your soul prospereth. We tend to think of health only from a physical standpoint. You know, if there is a text you want to write down, or you may remember it, would be Luke 4, 18 to 21. Because Jesus went back to preach his first sermon at Nazareth. And it was basically a health sermon. You can read it. You know, he said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. Now, he was quoting Isaiah 61. Some of the most beautiful verses in the Bible are Isaiah 61. But he goes in there and he covers 4 categories. And 2 of them deal with the emotions. And it's very interesting. Does somebody have that text? Does anybody turn to that would like to read it? Okay, Luke 4, 18 to 21. Somebody can read loud. I don't know what we're going to do about the filming of it. We'll just have to pick it up. Well, I see one person turning. Otherwise, people must be bashful. Maybe we don't have Bibles. You want to read it?
Yeah.
Read loud, please.
The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor.
Okay, poor. What does that mean? Obviously, people who are in want and in need will accept a lot more than we think we're rich and have everything. Okay?
He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set free those who are oppressed, to proclaim the favorable year of the Lord. How far?
That's it. Okay, I don't know what version was that?
NASB.
Okay, that threw me a little bit of a curve there. But he refers to twice there. Yes, he does refer to releasing people who are enslaved. What are we enslaved to today? What am I enslaved to? He makes reference to people who are mourning. That's why I love Isaiah 61 when it says he will turn our ashes into beauty. And you can just read that a little bit later on your own. But the point is, 2 of the 4 here would be areas we wouldn't even think of. Now, we've not done a very good job in our conference, and I don't know, Becky, do they know that, is it all right to tell them who you are in reference to me, or you don't want them to know? Becky has been my secretary now for about 17 years, and she somehow has survived. But we've not done, and I say we, not her, obviously me, we've not done a very good job, I don't think, regarding mental health. We tend to focus a lot on some of the other things, but there's, sometimes I bring a book with me that was put together by our General Conference Health Director, Dr. Andy Sides. He put together a 90 different presentations in a book about this thick. Well, I attended the class that was the overview for that. So technically, we could have 90 different presentations, 1-hour presentations. That's how many different directions you can go in health. And that's why, obviously, that would take a long time to do. But we are hoping to focus a little bit more on mental health in our conference. We've not done a very good job, but the point is Jesus referred twice to the emotions. Twice. And so we can see the effect of the mind and our emotions. You see, when we don't feel good, are we interested even in studying? My daughter she has a lot of migraines. And, when you've got migraines, you don't really feel like doing a lot of studying. So, anyway, now what's interesting about those texts is that you may remember Jesus was speaking to his home crowd. And when it was all over, what did they do? They rejected him. They even took him out and tried to kill him if the angels hadn't have intervened. But how many of us, I usually like to ask this question, how many of us would like to be at an optimum level of health? Okay, you raised your hand, so you asked for it. Keep that in mind, okay? All right. So God wants us to be at an optimum level, and you just raised your hand you want. So where are we? Well, let's go on. Somebody read this quote, please.
Pure air, sunlight, abstemiousness, rest, exercise, proper diet, the use of water, trust in divine.
So basically, this is why we're choosing the New Start acronym, okay? And we should be thankful that, that the Bible is God's owner's manual. And we've been given modern day help through the spirit of prophecy. But I want to make this clear now so you don't misunderstand me. It is very important that as Seventh-day Adventists, we don't fall into the trap of judging other people. I mentioned this morning a quick synopsis of Dane Griffin's situation. What I'd like for us to remember is that all of us in this room are at different parts on the path of life. If you take from here to this point, I doubt any of us are at the exact same point. And Paul makes it very plain in the Bible that health as such is not religion. Now, we understand the necessity of all the good, important points of health, but we sometimes judge people, on this subject, and nobody assigned me to judge anybody. Matter of fact, the Bible says I'll be judged the same way I judge other people. And now, we mean well on that subject. I know we do. And, we in personal ministries, we come in sometimes and do, we do how to check your gifts. We study the spiritual gifts and we define them, and then we do a actual test and then a confirmation of people so they can find their gifts. Well, there happens to be one of those gifts that's listed, in which a lot of Seventh-day Adventists think it's their gift, and that is that they understand other people's needs. And we tend to sometimes maybe think that. So let's not do that today. Let's think about from our standpoint, okay? And I could ask if anybody in here is absolutely perfect, because maybe if you're in that case, you're in a different position than maybe some of the rest of us. I'm fully aware of what the Spirit of Prophecy tells us, that as we come closer and closer to the end of the time, how we're going to be related to health. But again, let's read that from our own standpoint, okay? All right, New Start acronym we use from, as I said earlier this morning. From a nutritional standpoint, we recognize that there are certain basic ingredients that God has designed our body to use. Elements, if you want to call them that. And He's done that for a purpose. He knew what this body needs. You may have heard me tell this before, but in my lifetime, I've messed up, not one, not two, but 3 automobiles. How did I manage to do that? Well, it seemed that I didn't think it was very important to change the oil in cars. My dad came one day, I was teaching, and he checked my car, and he said, "Did you know your car doesn't have a drop of oil in it?" And I said, "Really?" I was literally, after I went to work at the conference office, driving my little blue Honda down to about the Rocky Face exit, and that thing just stopped. Now, a person could say that maybe it froze up, but I think it melted. 3 cars I did that. But I want y'all to know that I finally got smarter. And I finally bought a Pontiac Transport. Pontiac, not a Honda or something else. I had a General Motors car. And I started checking the oil every 3,500 miles. Result? I got about 250,000 miles out of a General Motors car, if you can believe that. See, it pays to follow the owner's manual. So let's take a quick look. Now remember, we're not going to spend a lot of time in any one category today, because what I do, as I said, is an overview. Hopefully somewhere in here, there may be something today that you say, hey, that's an area I can do better in, okay? So as we look at this, we're going to start with carbohydrates. Now, used to, we talked about simple sugars and complex sugars and those kinds of things. But in carbohydrates, God has designed a food that will give us energy. And right here you can just see it says it's sources of starch, sugars, and fiber. So those are the 3 categories. This is why God designed carbohydrates. Different types of sugars, different categories of sugars, different categories of starches, and fiber, and we'll see how all these are important in just a moment as we go through this. Now, it mentions that the sources of the sugars are converted to what in your body? Glucose. And God has designed a specific part of our body, the pancreas, to produce insulin to tear this down. So if you had sugar at lunch, and it could be different types, and I'm not going to go into all this. If you want to learn more about the sugars, you can go look up whether it be fructose or maltose or sucrose or whatever these different forms of sugars are, they're the different kinds of food, then if you ate, let's just say, and I was eating so fast, which really wasn't ideal, but I was eating, I don't even remember for sure what I ate there. But let's just say that I had fruit and there was some fructose. Okay, right now, my stomach is calling for the pancreas to send some insulin to break down this sugar into glucose. Okay? Now that's important, and I'll show you why in just a moment. But notice that it says what? That it can be used for what? What does it say? Fuel. Energy. You know, as you know, I look pretty old and I am old. I keep expecting my friends will say something, but they won't say hold on. Anyway, and you know, and sometimes when you're old, you expect people to say, "Hi, I'm glad to be here today. Hope y'all are doing well." You know, I have as much energy as I've ever had in my life. And, you know, we'll talk about that in a few minutes, and I hope that I'm able to maintain it till I'm whatever, years. But anyway, body fuel. It's not an accident. God's designed for us to have this fuel, okay? Now, what does this say? Fruits, vegetables, and cereals are the main source of carbohydrates. Now, again, if Minerva wants to, she can bring you in some nutritionists or some people who can spend a whole weekend or a week on isolating these things, okay? We're not going to do that today. Now, what does this say? Who would like to read this? Andrew, you want to read some today? What does that say?
58% of total calories each day should come from these foods.
Okay. How much of your calories per day should come from this particular category? It just said 58. That's almost 2/3. Okay, so are you getting that much? Are you not? Now, folks, it's very easy to analyze your own diet. I used to do this when I was in college. I did it when I was a teacher in public school. I had our kids do this. Write down everything they ate and drank for 2 to 3 days. And you would be surprised. One thing I found out when I was in public school teaching, that was a long time ago, even at that point, the average number of kids were drinking 4 soft drinks a day. They were averaging about 2 glasses of milk a day and only about 1 to 2 glasses of things like orange juice or other juices. Now, we say, well, that was public school. I'm going to tell you something. We're not much better off than the world. And matter of fact, some of the places now are making us look sick. Somebody just the other day, Becky, sent us a note that said North Texas State University in Texas now has a vegan cafeteria. Isn't that right, Becky? A vegan cafeteria. It didn't just say a bar in the cafeteria. It said a whole section or their own cafeteria. And that's not a Seventh-day Adventist college. As I go around, I mean, it is amazing, but I can't get off on that. Okay, 58%. This is something you need to analyze what you're getting. Remember, don't look at your neighbor and say, Andrew, are you getting 58%? I know what I'm getting. But anyway, okay, who would like to read this section? Somebody hadn't read, just read up.
Found primarily in plant foods, acts as a bulking agent that helps keep the intestines clean.
Now, there's different opinions on this. This one says 35 grams of fat. Sometimes it'll say 20 to 40 or 25 to 40. But somewhere in that vicinity is what the average adult needs. Now remember, when we talk about what we need, that's a general figure. If I weigh 100 pounds and you weigh 200 pounds, or let me rephrase that. If I weigh 200 pounds and you weigh 100 pounds, we're going to have different needs in all these categories, okay? So keep that in mind. These are general figures. All right, now what did it say? What does it say here about fiber? What does it say again? A bulking agent that helps keep what? I'm very sensitive to this because my mother died with colon cancer. God has designed food to have fiber to do its work in the intestines. You need to know how much fiber you're getting. Colon cancer is one of our leading killers. And because of that, I have colonoscopies every 10 years, and I also work real hard with some natural herbs that work in the colon. And I'm very, very sensitive to this. We need to be. okay? If it runs in your family, and especially if you're over 40, you need to take these things serious. And while I'm saying that, if you're over 40, we need to start having some kind of health tests about every 2 to 3 years minimally. There's just too many things that can come up, and we just need to do it, okay? All right. Now, we're going to look at this a little bit more. If somebody will read this for me. Well, I just went over that category, so that's okay. You can go to any bookstore and buy a book that now covers the glycemic index. This is now how they rate sugars. Okay, years ago it was complex sugar or simple sugars, which didn't really mean anything to anybody, unless you were a nutritionist. So now they have a rating system. I mentioned this morning, diabetes, about 22 million diabetics now. 5 million don't even know they have it. And 42 million pre-diabetics. We do health testing around in the pioneer outreach areas. These are areas where we don't have churches. And in Vidalia last year, you may have seen this story in the communique. We had an individual who came up and his blood sugar level was over 400. Fortunately, our nurse said, you're not leaving here unless you go straight to the hospital. And the family later said it probably saved his life. He wasn't even aware that he was a diabetic or had that problem. And so we need to take this seriously. But very quickly, I'm just going to give you some quick ideas of how this works. Again, if you want, you can get books that are very thorough, big, thick books about every food out there, including fast food restaurants. But here, let's look at the categories. The first one has to do with, what do we got up here? Grains? Okay. Now, on the glycemic index, anything that's at about 100 is regarded as okay if it's under that, but if it goes over, it starts going into high, slightly high, and if it gets up to about 125, it's too high. Ultimately, though, it's the glycemic load for the day that counts. And most of the experts believe that you should not go over 350 grams a day. And people, if we looked at the average diets of Americans, it's probably in the 500 or 600 category. Let's just give you some examples. Okay, let's say that at lunch today you had pasta, which I think you did have some type of pasta. These are normal servings, okay, which would be whatever a normal serving is. I can't actually define that, but it'd be a few spoons. And that would be 64 grams of this as it breaks down to glucose. But look over here. Let's say that you had French bread. What does it say? How much is French bread? 136. Which means that is in the high-risk area already, that if you had 2 servings of this, you'd still be under the French bread. And then you can just simply look very quickly, because I don't have much time to spend on all this, but you might want to notice some things, such as whole wheat versus some of the other things that you might like, and you can just kind of pick whatever you'd like down through here. There might be some surprises. You might notice some of the sweets on here that people like. Let's just take a waffle. Okay, what is waffle there? 109? That's one waffle. What if I have 3? I'm already getting close to the sugar load for the day. Now, it just gives you some ideas for us to be serious. And in a few minutes, you're going to see a lot of other categories that we need to be concerned over. Okay? Cereals. Cereals. Easiest up here is what? Barley, 36. What's the highest over here? Rice Chex. Notice you can have about 4 or 5 servings for this compared to this. You can look, this is in your notebook, so there's no need to spend a lot of time on it. You can look at it later. Gives you a quick idea of the glycemic index. Here are fruits. This would be fructose. Cherries is the lowest. This one may surprise you, and that's watermelon. And so whatever you like, whatever your favorite fruit is, I'm sorry, that's going to be a problem because I keep moving in this area. But whatever your favorite is, especially if diabetes runs in your family, let's be aware of it, okay? The legumes, here you can see the lower end, just real low over here. These are good things. Over here, you start running into some pretty high numbers. Okay? Here we have the sugars, and some of these may surprise you. Obviously, some of these things are put into candies and cookies and things like that. If it's a fruit cookie, it would probably have the fructose. But have you ever looked at labels? We need to read labels. Because if you wanted to bring somebody in here, Minerva, that might be interesting, that would be important, might be reading labels. Because there may be 4, 5, or 6 different kinds of sugars in one candy bar or cookie. And it comes in all kinds of things. It may say corn syrup, you know, it may say any of these other things. And so, or some of these things you're not getting an accurate read on at all. And so I think you understand the point. Okay, let's see here. Anyway, I think that's the last thing we're going to cover on the carbohydrates. Now we're going to switch to another nutrient that God has designed for our body, and that's protein. And you're going to, and by the way, I didn't tell you this at the beginning. I'm sorry. I tried to tell y'all at the beginning. Maybe you'd want to sit over here. I've got to stand somewhere, and I don't want to be in the other room. I'm going to show a film at the end today called A Diet for All Reasons. The guy is not a Seventh-day Adventist. It will go into detail on some of these issues. That's another reason I don't cover a lot of time on nutrition today. I'm just giving you a quick overview because he will cover some things, and you're going to see some of these things, especially on protein. Protein has been designed by God to build the hard parts of our body, bones, fingernails, hair, and these kinds of things. And it's going to be very interesting if you watch to see how much protein you're getting. The average Americans are getting. Look at this. Somebody read this for me real quick.
A person needs approximately 1/3 of their body weight in grams of protein each day. A 150-pound person needs 54 grams of fiber each day.
Okay, 150-pound person needs how much? 54 grams. If you weigh over that, it's going to start going up. Take 1/3 of it. If you're 200 pounds, 190 pounds, 180 pounds, or if you're 90 pounds or 80 pounds, then it's going to be a little difference. But this is important. And I'm going to tell you why it's important. Well, I'm not going to tell you, I don't think, too much, but Dr. Clapper's going to, because the modern day research now is showing that excess protein is not stored in the body. Fat is stored in the body. We're going to look at fat in just a moment. But protein goes out the body, and there's a process of digestion and bringing down protein, which they now know pulls calcium out of the bones. And you're going to hear him talk about that, because obviously one of the big diseases is osteoporosis. And you're going to hear him talk about giving more calcium pills, because a lot of doctors say you need more calcium. No, the problem may be too much protein. And the protein is robbing your body of the calcium. As it goes out the body, it's stealing the calcium and the phosphorus. Important point, and you'll pick up on that as we go along, okay? Protein, okay, somebody read this section real quick.
Meat. Go ahead.
Meat and dairy products are high in protein, but vegetarian proteins such as soy products, legumes, and nuts are a superior choice.
Okay. The average American believes that protein, it's best to eat meat and more of it. He's going to talk a lot about that this afternoon, Dr. Clapper, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, except that it points out, and we got to remember that in creation, we were created in a perfect world, and there was no killing. So God designed this body initially, obviously and ideally, to have plant protein. But again, that means within reason. For example, I'll just use English walnuts. They have shown that a small amount of English walnuts are actually good for your heart. But that doesn't mean 2 handfuls of walnuts, okay? So, because of the fat content. So, there's some of these things we need to be aware of. Fats, there is a page in there. I put it on the right-hand side. Shayla, don't get sleepy yet. We've got a long way to go. See, they knew they'd get picked on. That's why they came right to the front, I think. There's 2 kinds of fats, saturated and unsaturated fats. I've put a sheet in there which tells you all about this and how much you need of each, okay? And so I don't think I'm going to spend a lot of time on it, but let's just have somebody read this section right here.
Most concentrated form of energy. supplying over twice as many calories per gram as protein.
Stop right there. Did you hear what it said? This is the most concentrated form of energy. So we've gotten two things here, carbohydrates, but fats. But notice the difference. Okay? Go ahead.
Supplying over twice as many calories per gram as protein or carbohydrates.
Okay? Fats can be stored in your body. And this is where the problem comes. And this is why you need to study that sheet that I've put in there, because it shows some of the sources of saturated versus unsaturated foods that you need and don't need. You really don't need more than about 15 to 20 grams of saturated fat a day, and somewhere between, depending on your body size again, somewhere between 40 and 55 of unsaturated fat. And again, that's best from plants. Okay, but again, we get tons of it in meat, and he's going to show it to you. He's going to show you pulling stuff out of guys' arteries as a result of some of the animal products of fat, which can be extremely high. And the sheet I put in there will show you, just compare it. Compare it to what foods you eat, and I'm asking you to do analyze your own diet for about 2 days. Don't cheat, please. You know what I'm saying? Don't say, well, I really drink 6 glasses of milk a day, but I think I'll put down 3. I don't want to really know the truth. Well, why are you doing it if you don't want to know the truth, you know? That's like people step on a scale and they don't really want to see it. Okay. What's this one say right here?
Can be efficiently stored for future use.
That's right. God designed that in case of emergencies, this kind of thing. And so, you know, God knew what he was doing. Okay? Shayla, just keep reading this, if you don't mind.
Unsaturated fats from plants are the healthiest sources.
Okay?
Saturated fats come mostly from meat and dairy products.
Mostly meat and dairy products. And so this is where we really, really need to be careful. We did mention that some of the fats in things like walnuts and these kinds of things would be much better. Okay? I like you read. I'm going to let you keep reading. That way you won't go to sleep. Just joking.
Less than 30% of total calories each day should come from fat, of which less than 7% should come from saturated fat. Out of 55 to 64 grams of fat each day, 11 to 16 grams could be saturated fat.
Okay, again, we're not going to spend much time on this. You can read and you can see these things. And I think I'm going to go ahead and move on from here. These are some statistics you can read. Obviously, Americans, we have a serious problem in this category, so we need to be aware of it. I'm not going to say much here about the vitamins and the minerals. And by the way, in there, besides the handout I've given you, I'm giving you a free magazine called Amazing Health. And that will have most of the science research that we're quoting up here today, and most of some that I'm not quoting. So you're going to have no excuse. If you study all this, you should be better educated, and I'm not implying you're not, but I should say better knowledge if you're not in that situation. I will just say this, that most of us are aware that vitamins and minerals, well, I shouldn't say it that way because sometimes we're not aware. Vitamins and minerals have been designed by God to help keep the body in a good, healthy condition, maintain it. It is not designed to necessarily give us energy. We just read 2 different things that give us energy. So some people say, well, I need more vitamins. Well, the vitamins and the minerals, the best ones come in natural plants. So now listen to me. I'm not going to say anything's wrong, as far as buying vitamins and minerals, obviously as a supplement. But all vitamins and minerals aren't created equal. Some of them, some companies, and I won't mention names, use gigantic amounts of fillers. I mean, if they can sell you a vitamin and only 20% of it's nutrient and the rest of it's water or something else, then they're going to do it. So you do need to be serious and watch what you're buying. And generally speaking, I think you're better off in herb stores than you would be at a convenience store somewhere where their main thing is they don't care about your health, they care about your pocketbook. And, I'm just saying the way I feel it is. That doesn't mean it's that way, but that's my opinion. Anyway, we recognize that tests have shown that blueberries and strawberries are our best, number one, antioxidants. And it would be good. Now, it's easy in the summer. I know I eat some of these about every day, and they're easy to get. Now, wintertime is a little easier. Keep in mind, again, that once we start processing, we start freezing, we start doing some of these other things, I'll just tell you, I heard a nutritionist from, I guess, I don't remember, Florida, wherever. Anyway, now, I don't know how accurate this is, but I believe it's probably pretty accurate. And that is that orange juice, for example, will only hold the vitamin C to the level that it needs to be for about 3 days. And that's why fresh orange juice would be superior to frozen or canned or something else. But at the same time, it could be fresh and then sitting there and it's going to weaken. So you just have to keep these things in mind. We know it's difficult, but we need to do the best we can. How many antioxidants are you getting every day? You need to decide that. I don't need to decide for you, okay? And these other things, these are all in your notes. We could go into how many green, things you're getting every day. Are you getting? I try to have broccoli or spinach or something like this every day. You analyze yourself. Well, what am I getting? Okay? All right. This is something I want to cover before we leave nutrition. It's the only study I have seen anywhere. There may be others, and you're welcome to tell me if there are others, but it's the only one I've seen about the effects of eating between meals. Now, we're fully aware, I believe, that we're told from the spirit of prophecy that we really shouldn't eat anything between meals. Now, every time I have a meeting like this, somebody raises their hand and says, well, my doctor told me that I need to eat every 2 hours because I'm trying to lose weight. I'm not going to say, I'm speaking generally. I'm telling you what a quote says, but I want to show you this study. Okay, I'm not, again, condemning you or anything else. But look at this study. Person number 1, by the way, normally the food that you eat is in your stomach 4.5 hours out. Now that's if you don't eat excess food, and it depends what you ate. Obviously, it's going to take longer to digest steak than it is some apples or oranges. You know what I'm saying? And so 4.5 hours out of the person's stomach. Person number 2, what does it say here? What did they have, Andrew?
Ice cream cone 2 hours after meal.
No. What did they eat?
Ice cream.
They had ice cream. You ate breakfast this morning at 8 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, you slipped over here and had some ice cream, and now the residue in your stomach was in there what? 6 hours? That's what they found in the research. So the ice cream affected the digestive process in your stomach. Person number 3. What did it say? What did this person have? Let's see, Becky? Peanut butter sandwich. 10 o'clock this morning. Mid-morning. You had breakfast at 8. Peanut butter sandwich at 10. And what did it do to your body? What does it say about the residue in your stomach? Hello? 9 hours? That's double what it should be. Now watch how the process works. You ate breakfast. I don't even care if it was a healthy breakfast at 8 o'clock. The peanut butter is going to keep that food in your stomach until about, it's 9 hours, about 4:30 this afternoon or something. But what about the food at lunch? It's now in there. And guess what? You ate at 12:30, and at 2:30 you had another peanut butter sandwich. Now do you begin to see the process and the problem? Hello? Y'all are not very responsive. Every once in a while say something so I know you're awake, because I don't like to talk to sleepy people or dead people. Number 4, what's fourth person do here? Somebody? What? Pumpkin pie. Same result. 9 hours. Person number 5. What? Okay, same result. But look at this one. A bit of chocolate. I don't know what a bit is. I've had just people tell me it, but I'm not sure how much it is. But every 2 hours they had a bit of chocolate. Look at the results. 13 and a half hours later. Then we wonder why we have upset stomachs, why I can't sleep at night. I've been eating every 2 hours all day. So, yeah, I'm not going to get into this discussion of whether doctors are telling you that you need to eat every 2 hours. There's exceptions, I guess, to all situations and rules, And we're just showing you this test and its effect, which I believe is in support of what we've been told over 100 years ago. Okay? Now we're going to the next section. I generally spend more time on exercise because we talk about nutrition all the time. We bring in speakers to our churches all the time. Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. Don't raise your hand. You know, when was the last time you had people in here to talk to you 3 or 4 or 5 days on exercise only? Look at the statistics. Now keep in mind that statistics are just what they are. I don't know of any statistics that says 100% of this or 100% of that. They are indicators, strong indicators. Are you hearing me? So don't go out of here and say, well, boy, you know, indicators. But we need to think about this from a realistic standpoint. Let's look at exercise. Whoop, I didn't mean to go there. Okay, just very quickly, this is a test showing that exercise is the best what? Predictor of heart health. Now, I showed you the hearts earlier today. Now, we're talking about cardiovascular disease, which is our #1 killer, along with cancer's real close. On the film you're going to see this afternoon, he's going to talk to you a lot about cancer, prostate cancer, and breast cancer, the 2 leading cancer killers, and the factors in those 2. So I'm not going to need to say that right now. So we're looking at basically maybe cardiovascular disease here, and we're talking about our heart and the arterial system, okay? All of us, I think, know that our heart is about the size of our fist. I showed you a picture of that earlier today, okay? The arteries, we saw a picture earlier today, should be nice and clean. That's how God designed it, like a nice freeway for the blood to flow freely. But there's some problems, and we'll see those in a moment. But look at this. The least fit person over to the best fit person. And you'll see there's about a 3-time difference, almost 3 times difference, 4.5 to 1 point, whatever it is there. That's a strong indicator that exercise is important. All right, let's look at this simple test. This was Good Health Practices study, and this is men. The mortality rate for men is 12.4. That means out of today in America, out of 100 men, 12.4 men will die out of 100 with non-accidental deaths. Okay? Now, out of that category, I'm not going to worry about this category, the active category. Now, in their mind and on these tests, active means 30 to 45 minutes of exercise at least 4 days a week. 4 days, I didn't say 7. But look at the difference. You can see that a person who exercises, according to this test, a man, at least 4 days a week, and we're talking about cardiovascular exercise. What do I mean by cardiovascular exercise? We're talking about that which affects the heart, okay? Your heartbeat right now as you're sitting there is, average for men is about 72, or 70, somewhere 70, 75. Well, ladies is a little higher, okay? So you can find out what your pulse rate is, okay? Mine used to be 72, like a lot of other people. But then I stepped up my exercise. So my heart rate is now around 55 to 60, which means my heart is getting almost 15 beat rests per minute. Now, does that mean I'm going to live any longer? No. Does it give me a little better chance? Yes, because the only time my heart's going to get to rest is in between beats. So it's only logical that if it's going real fast, it's not going to get as much rest as if it's very, very slowly. Understand? So again, no guarantees. Dane Griffin walked. He exercised all the time. These things happen. It was an indicator for me that it worked as far as giving my heart more rest. All right, ladies. That's the first time I've laid it down today. It probably won't be the last, and I'll be asking where it is in a minute probably. Whoop, wrong way. Ladies, mortality rate is 9. That is, out of every 100, 9 ladies today would die with non-accidental death. That would be any kind of diseases. Well, look at their exercise rate. 2.9, which means that's almost triple, ladies. If you exercise at least 4 days a week, you're lowering your mortality rate more than triple. Now think about it. If I could come in here today and sell you a product, and I said, if you will buy this little gadget, it's going to guarantee you, or at least come close to guaranteeing, it's going to really help you to live 3 times longer, or 3 times longer as far as heart attacks are concerned. Would you be interested? We buy stuff with less benefits than that people sell us all the time. And so, look at this. Important. I would say so. Look at this test. No, actually, I don't want you to look up here. Look over there somewhere. Look at me. I don't want you to. Don't look up there. Don't cheat. It's like in tests. You say, what's he hiding? If I ask you this afternoon, what would you say are some of the leading diseases leading factors in people dying with diseases? What would you say would be the number one? As a Seventh-day Adventist, what would you probably say? Okay, I heard smoking. Usually we say smoking because we have a strong stance on smoking. What's another one? High glucose, obesity. Okay, now you can look up here. This was a test of 32,000 men, 32,000 plus men, and 6,000 plus ladies. It was done at Harvard University. And I want you to look at the number one category. This is not a small test. Anytime you've got almost 40,000 people, that's a good-sized test. They give us political results from 1,000 people. 40,000, look at, what's it say the number one factor is? Hello? Low fitness. Not only that, they found out with any combination of these things, if they exercised, they were better off than a Seventh-day Adventist who didn't do these things but didn't exercise. Now, the test didn't really say that, but I say it to get your attention. Because sometimes we sit here and say, I don't smoke, I don't have high glucose, I don't eat meat, and I don't have high cholesterol. According to this test, if you do not exercise, you're still no better off than a person who smokes but exercise. Now, I don't know if that's a fact. I'm telling you what the test said, and that's a pretty good test, and I've seen it in more than one place. I will tell you this. I was in a group like this one day, and a guy said, great, I can keep smoking now if I just keep exercising. And I said, okay, that wasn't my point. Anyway, we're showing these factors. Now, we're going to throw in another health risk right here, and this is the waist girth, which is another very strong indicator. And this is men, that if your waist girth, and we'll notice the comparison here, that if the waist girth is, I've lost the health risk, is, I can't even read the inches, 39 and 35. That's only 4 inches difference. But look at the risk factor. It's 2.3 over to 1, which means it is almost double the risk factor, just 4 inches out on your waist. Okay, ladies, more significant. Ladies, 37 inch. Less than 33. Again, that's about a 4-inch difference, but it's almost triple, ladies, the effect as far as your health of heart attack risks are concerned. So keep that in mind. And then, of course, we have these pictures that we talked about earlier. And if you look at some of these statistics, I didn't have time to do that this morning. Let's just do that. This is about the size of your fist, is about the size of your heart is about the size of your fist. Somebody read this one for me. Quickly.
The opening of a normal artery should be about 4 times the thickness of the artery wall.
Okay, about 4 times thicker. Okay? All right, let's look at this one. Somebody read this one for me.
There are usually no signs of disease until 90 to 95% of the artery is plugged.
Okay, I said that this morning, and usually no indication. Matter of fact, most people have a heart attack die the first heart attack they have. And again, we're getting to see the reason, both up there and in what I'm holding. Let's look at the next statistic. Somebody read that one.
This artery is 99% plugged with buildup of cholesterol and plaque.
Okay, if it's to the heart, you're going to have a heart attack. You'll see this with Dr. Clapper. He's going to stress this too. If it's to your brain, you could have a stroke. You could have some other things. Now, notice what it said is the main culprit. What was the chemical up there that was the culprit? Cholesterol. I'm going to ask you a question. Don't raise your hand. Do you know what your cholesterol is today? Now, cholesterol is a waxy substance that God has created in your body. All animals make their own cholesterol because it's to aid in digestion. Now watch. Do you know what your cholesterol level is? Let's just say today, and by the way, that's changed some when I was a kid. There's so many people with high cholesterol, they kind of raised the figure. But if it's over 200, the doctors are going to tell you, that's too high. Listen to this. For every 10 number it goes up, you are beginning to add a level of risk. Like if it's 210, it's going to be like double the chance for a heart attack. 220, it's going to be triple. It's going to start going up, believe it or not. I've seen people in our health testing sometimes this kind of thing with 3 and 350 cholesterol. That doesn't even include the triglycerides, which is buildup of fat. So we need to take this seriously. Now, there's two kinds of things you've heard, haven't you, of cholesterol. You've heard that, and somewhere here, here it is right here. We have, what do we have? HDL and LDL. Okay, what does that stand for? Well, to save time, the LDL is low-density lipoproteins. That's the scientific name, if you want to use that. And then you get HDL, which is the high density. Now, this is the good, this is the bad. And the reason it's classified that way is that this, by God, has been designed to hold together very well when we have cholesterol. So from plant foods, this is not real bad. It's not going to break apart and stick around in your in your arteries. But this one, mainly from meat products, doesn't hold together very well. And when it starts breaking apart, then it's sticky and it starts forming on the walls of the arteries. And it's like a garbage, like your sink, the drainage pipe from your sink. You do it for a year or two, and then one day it's stopped up all of a sudden. How'd that happen? Well, maybe it was like this over a bit of time. So, I'm going to ask you again. Do you know what your cholesterol is? Do you know what your HDL is and what your LDL is? You should know. You really should know. And there's another factor, and that is the difference between the LDL and HDL. The ratio is extremely important and is a predictor for heart trouble. Now, okay, those are the facts. Let's talk about what we can do about it. Okay, all right. Let's look at exercise. Now, aerobic is we're talking about exercise that has to do with oxygen. Okay, and so let's just talk about that a little bit. I want to show this before we get into it. This is something that research has just come out in about the last year and a half from Harvard University about each one of our cells. Now, you remember taking biology a long time ago in school? For some of us, it was a long time ago. And we learned the parts of the cell. Some of you kids that are taking biology now that we had in high school, you probably have down in 4th grade now, 3rd. But you learned it has a nucleus, which is the center part here. But then there was this part called the mitochondria. Now they know that the mitochondria controls how much blood flows into each cell. Now listen carefully. 60 trillion cells or plus. God has designed a mechanism which controls how much blood goes in there. What they found out on the research was, and if you don't hear anything else today, they found out that if a person exercises 30 to 45 minutes at least 4 days a week, that it will increase the amount of blood flow 2 to 3 times per cell. What does that mean? It means that if I am in good condition, each one of my cells is getting 2 to 3 times more blood. What's the blood carrying? Hello? Oxygen, which God has designed to keep our cells alive. Now you can begin to see why, when you're not in good condition, just to walk out here to the road to the mailbox, I'm out of breath. Because the cell is gasping for more blood. I need more blood, I need more blood, I need more oxygen. So that's why we have the In Step for Life program. On the NAD committee about 4 years ago, I said, why do we not have a program in our denomination? We should be leading the world in fitness as Seventh-day Adventists. Hello? And so from that has come the In Step for Life program that's designed to get every Seventh-day Adventist moving. I don't care if it's crawling, standing on your head, walking on your hands, or whatever. We need to start moving, folks. And you know, we can talk about time and all those things. We will in just a moment. But we've got to look at this and remember, it's not going to change by thinking about it, watching videos or DVDs on it, or talking to somebody about it. You have got to do it. And we're going to talk about that as we look at some of these other things very quickly. I don't even know that I need to go into this because this one is walking, times, and heart health. I think this is a nurse's health study. But look what they showed here, that if a person walks 1 hour a week, they lower their chance by heart attack by 29%, and it goes on over here. And if you add gusto to it, what does that mean? Well, I'm walking fast, but maybe I'm really putting it into it. All right, you add another 5%, and notice you've lowered your chance by heart attack by 59%. And somebody says, well, where's the 100% mark? Well, that won't happen until Christ comes and we get into heaven and we won't have any more heart attacks. But we can do better because he designed this system, the heart and the arteries, to work at an optimum level. You raised your hand. I'm getting excited, but that's okay. You know, the truth is, we raise our hand, we want fitness. And he showed us how. Then what in the world is the problem? Well, okay. Here's what the InStep program is asking you to do. Now, in your chart, on your page there, pull out InStep. That'll be on the left side. Okay? Now, the first plan simply talks about that you can measure your movements in one of two really ways. If you want to get a pedometer, and by the way, I just brought a pedometer today, and I think I'm going to give this away today if somebody wants it. So it'll be on this table if you're first. It's not the best pedometer. We've got an advertisement in there for what one of our churches found was a little better because this pedometer does not adjust. No, wait a minute, not yet.
You said come up and get it.
No. I thought I was going to have to use my karate kick, Andrew. You know, boop, boop. Anyway. The point is, this one does not adjust the stride. Now, if I'm doing, Shayla, would you mind coming up here a minute? Come on, it'll get you awake. Okay. Let's just look at our strides. Let's start right here going that way. You get it right here. You take your normal stride. Just don't think about doing it. Just take a normal stride. Go ahead, Shayla. Stop. Her first step was right there. Look at that. Where's my first stride? Notice it's almost double that stride. So, you can thank you. I love these two kids. I honestly do. They're not even my kids, but I really love them. Did you notice that if we're using that same pedometer, what do you think is going to happen in a mile? There's going to be a lot more steps by her than me. Matter of fact, I was at one time when I was in college, some of us boys had gone to Florida, and on the beach, one of them was shorter than me. He said, let's just put a mark and just count and see how many steps more I have to take than you. And it was very interesting that we figured out that he would have to take 150 more steps in a mile than I would. So it's good if you get a pedometer that's adjustable on the stride, okay? But pedometer's one way. You put it on, measure everything you do all day long. In our office, Jerry Fore and Ed Wright both use pedometers from the time they get up till they go to bed. Ironically, they came within about, what was it, Becky? Within about 3 steps equal in the whole year. I asked them if they were going around holding hands everywhere. I mean, it was really strange because it was just worked out that way. Now, somebody has calculated the average steps would be about 2,000 steps for a mile. Our goal in the NAD and in our conference is to try to get everybody walking 5 miles, okay? Now, let's talk about that. Let's say you're not doing anything. If you're 40 years old or older, make sure you get doctor's permission, clearance, that it's safe to even walk, okay? Because we don't want anybody falling over. That can happen. One of our churches in this conference had an aerobics class. A guy came in from the community and died the first night he was out there. You can't take this, you've got to take it seriously. Now, can results happen? Yes. I'll use two cases. You probably saw it in the communique. A lady up here in Murphy, North Carolina. Bad car wreck. Really bad car wreck. Brian, didn't you go with us to film that? Yes, he did. Doctors did not think they did not think she would ever walk again. They weren't sure about that. Well, the school was doing an aerobic equivalency walk or a simulated walk to Alaska and back, like 4,000 miles. And she wanted to do her part. So she took her crutches and just started walking to her mailbox. She said it's about 100 feet. She started doing that a number of times a day. When we went up there to film the DVD, she was already walking 5 or 6 miles and throwing away her crutches except when she was going up hills. I was going to have her at camp meeting this year, but she couldn't get away there. But she told me, she said, oh, well, the doctors are trying to get me to slow down. I said, I'm still walking 6 miles. She said, I'm almost all my medication. I had a guy that came to camp meeting this year, if you were there at Collegedale. And he was a fairly new Seventh-day Adventist. He had diabetes. He had all kind of problems. He started exercising. He was off his medication, and just on and on and on. We had another lady up here in Ellijay, Georgia, 80 years of age. And this was more than a few years ago, but we went up to film her. She was walking just like this until somebody got on a walking program. And when we filmed her, she was walking with her head straight like anybody else. The point is, we can all, we need to address this and start out slowly. Set your goals realistically. There is a simple indicator. What do you think it is? Don't tell them, Becky. What's the simple indicator of where you start and how fast you're moving? What do you think it would be? What about your breathing? If you're breathing hard, then you may be going too fast. So set a realistic goal. Can you go to that road out there and back and come back and feel still completely normal? Heart's not beating fast? Good. Then you probably could double that. Can you go to a track and go all the way around? That's 1/4 mile. Can you do that and you're carrying on a conversation? Or are you out of breath? Then go half that. Are you listening? Set some simple goals. And do it regularly. Did it pay off for me? Well, it certainly did, because I started running and I started doing all these kinds of things. And my cholesterol at one time used to be around 230. Now, I changed my diet to go along with it, but I've already told you my heart rate changed and my cholesterol came down to under 150. On the famous Framingham heart study, he'll refer to it today on the film, they didn't find one heart attack with anybody whose cholesterol was over 150. So that is my goal, to keep it under 150. But again, don't go out here saying, but I knew somebody, again, we're not going to be perfect until Christ comes back, but it's certainly, we're in the right direction to where God wants us to be. So set realistic goals. Now, I said you can measure with a pedometer. Maybe you want to walk 1 mile a day. The pedometer, you may walk that far at work. But now I do need to say this. I do believe that we'd be a little better off if we could set our paces. For example, I could move around like this all day. It's not really doing a great deal for my heart. So if I'm walking a little faster, and I have a test, but I don't think we've got it up here, that shows the speed is a factor, okay? If you can, it would be good to do this in a systematic, organized way rather than just through the day. But it works. Now, the other ways to measure is to set a goal, is by time or distance, okay? What do I mean by that? What I just said. 1/4 mile a day. Or 1 mile a day, or 3 miles a day. Set it up and then keep, and that's why we give you a chart. She gives you a chart to keep your steps, but ultimately, that's just to keep you focused. And you might want to set it more by miles and that type of thing as far as your goals, okay? Or you might want to do it, and I actually do it by the clock. Because I run a lot, okay? I love running. They've heard this because they got that on my computer, I think, so I couldn't remember it. What's your password? I love running, or I love to run, something like that. Well, again, how did I lower my heart rate, Pastor? I lowered it from 75 to about 55, or 72 to 55, because over a period of time, I was running. Now, I've been a little slow switching to this modern day concept of interval training and intermittent training. Because I'm from the old school, you know, I coached football, basketball, girls, all kind of sports. And I was taught, you know, 80% of maximum, you know, hard as you can go for as long as you can go and that type of thing. But lately I've been experimenting a little bit by running 5 minutes, walking 2 minutes, running 5 minutes, walking 2 minutes. And believe it or not, it does seem to be working. So, you know, it's never too late for old dogs to learn new tricks, I guess. I don't care. My point is, either do it by clock. Like if I'm going to go run, I will run 30 minutes or 40 minutes. Okay? I know my pace, and so that's what I do. Now again, you don't just start out at long distances. I had been in sports all my life, but I'd never been in long distances. So a number of years ago, I set a goal. I'm going to build up to 10 miles. Well, do you think I started out at 10 miles? What would happen if you start? I know I'm going to ask that question. If we started out at 10 miles, we're not running, we're going to be all falling over and say, I'll never do that again. See, that's one of the things we do. We set goals that aren't realistic. And so I'll never do that again. I ran a quarter of a mile for 2 weeks, 3 days a week. Half a mile, 2 weeks. 3 quarters of a mile. Kept building until I got up to 10 miles that way. You can do the same thing. You can do the same thing. And I've got one last section to close, and we're pretty close to the break. I told you at 3:45, so we'll go about 5 more minutes, and we'll take our break, okay? We started late, pastors. We didn't start till 2:30. I didn't realize that over here at Adairsville, y'all were on a different time schedule. No, I'm just... Anyway, but I do want to, I'm not giving you a chance for questions, but I will at this point before I leave this because I think it's so important. I showed you why you need to exercise. Cardiovascularly now, I'm talking about your heart. And by the way, the breathing, as I said, let it be an indicator. You should be able to carry on a conversation when you're walking with somebody. If you can't, you're either going too fast or too far. Did you hear me? Too fast or too far. Any questions about exercise, cardiovascular exercise? Now, in your chart, on that right side or left side, it shows a lot of other activities other than walking. Could I see that a moment? And it compares 3 categories, easy, moderate, and active. And you can look at gardening. Pick gardening there, if you don't mind, and compare it to the one on walking. Okay, what's the easy score for gardening? How many minutes? How much? That means if you're working gardening, you're using a hoe out there and you're moving at a slow pace, it would take you an hour to equate running a mile. See at the top it says jogging a mile, aerobic mile. Okay, if you're walking an easy pace, how fast would you be walking? How long would it take you? How much? Walking. 24? Okay. So Andrew walks 24 minutes, easy pace. He's covered the same as running a mile. I'm in the garden. I'm working 60 minutes. All right, look at the most active category there. Gardening, what does it say? To equal a mile running. What is it? Look at most active under gardening. I can't hear you. 30. All right, what about walking? 15. Okay. Now, somebody says, well, isn't one kind of exercise better than another? Well, we all know, and I think we know that we read in the Spirit of Prophecy about how important it is to get out and gardening. Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. Usually you're away from cars and everything else. You're out in more pure air, and there's beautiful scenery and all that, compared to if you live where I live in Ringo and I got to run on the city streets and there's gas from cars and everything else. You can see the difference there. But look at the time factor. That's what we're talking about there. And you can look at anything on there. Riding bicycles, are you one of these people that get out on the road and people blow at you as you go down the road? You know, cycling is on here. All right. Any questions? I've got to go to one other section and we're going past our break time here. Any questions? How many of you are ready to start doing more than you're currently doing. Notice I didn't say you're not doing anything. I said more than what you're doing. Okay. Obviously, I guess the rest of us are doing really well, I hope. I mean, folks, if this is important, we raised our hand at the beginning. We wanted to be really well fit, didn't we? Didn't we say that? No shortcuts. Don't watch an exercise thing and say, they're doing a good job. I really enjoyed watching that. Next section, very quickly, and this is one we miss often. And that is that our body, God has created our body with 63 major muscles. 63 major muscles. Why did he do that? Fortunately, he did it so we can move all kind of directions. All kind of directions. You know, we can walk and look and move our head. We can do all kind of things. But the condition of those muscles is important. Let's talk about walking. When I walk, it doesn't just happen. That leg, there are actually some muscles here. Now, nowadays, they call them quadriceps or something else, but they're really, we used to call them the vastus lateralis and medialis, and those muscles. And, you know, and Andrew, you know how strong my legs are, don't you? So you don't have to tell them. Just tell them and you won't have to feel them again. I usually have somebody say, wow. Oh, well, I don't mind having the pastor do it. Here, he'll tell you. Now, he's going to tell the truth. Wow. Okay. Now, why does that matter? Well, to walk, that leg, the muscles have pulling that leg forward. Now, what did we learn a minute ago from the chart about the cell? How much more oxygen, remember, and more blood to that? Well, if I exercise a lot, it said 2 to 3 times better flow of blood for every cell. So that leg is going to move not only quicker, but more efficiently. So if I'm in terrible shape, I may have to go, oh. But if I'm in good shape, it's going to move a lot smoother. It's going to be a lot more efficient. And that's true with every exercise you do. Okay? Now, very quickly, to make a point on this, and as you look at this, you can't see it very well there, but our body is covered with muscles. Muscles in the front of your leg, muscles on the back of your leg, the back of the calves, front, arms. We got biceps, we got triceps, we got deltoid, we got all these muscles all over your body. And God didn't just say, well, let's just make a bunch of muscles so they can look good. No, he made it so that we could play efficiently or run efficiently or work efficiently. Now, he did not make our bodies for some sports that we play, and football is the main one, where people can get hit from this side. Those legs aren't made to go that way, and that's why we have such serious injuries in some of these sports. But, well, I'll come back to that in a few minutes. All right, let's look at this test because this is real important. There are 12 test items. This was a giant study. It was a 25-year study, 45 to 70 age people. And it was a 25-year study of strength training and its effect. Look at the results. And look at the different categories right across there. Ability to walk up steps, same thing, double. This one is, that's going up steps. This is walking a half a mile. And this one is lifting 10 pounds. You say, well, who wants to lift 10 pounds? Well, maybe you'd like to carry your own groceries in. 10 pounds. Instead of calling and saying, hey, W, can you come and carry my groceries? You know? So this is important. You can look at this either way. Either twice as more efficiently, or twice as easier, or twice more difficult, however you want to look at these. All right, dressing here, look at this. It's about 3 times, 3.5 times. This category is bathing, about triple. And this one, I know at the conference office, somebody said it got their attention. The ability to get on and off the toilet by yourself, almost triple. And then the last one, ability to feed yourself the same way. So what am I saying? All right, you hear everybody talk about cardiovascular disease. When was the last time you had somebody talk to you about the necessity of strength training? What do we mean by that? Well, this is a stomach, right here is the rectus abdominis. That's the muscle on your stomach that God created. You know what? There's no shortcuts on this. You can do crunches, sit-ups, whatever you want to call them. But you're going to have to make those muscles move to be in shape. That's why I do 200 sit-ups every other day, 35 on the off days, so I do 700 sit-ups a week. Why do I do that? Because I want it to be in shape in case Andrew comes along and hits me in the stomach. Okay? Why do I do regular push-ups? I do 35 push-ups every other day because I want my shoulders, my arms, and my chest to be in good shape. Now, another sit-up that you can do that you don't usually see, these are fastened, would be, kind of do it, it's kind of different here on this chair, would be tricep push-ups, okay? And that's you're simply using a chair, or in my case, at home, I just use the end of the bed. And so you can see how many tricep push-ups I can do while I'm talking to you, because I do 35 every other day. That adds up to about 100. Why do I do that? Not because I want to be the strongest man in town. I just want my arms in good shape. And so in your sheet, in your folder, are some other exercises. Leg exercises. Somebody's going to ask about free weights. I use a 50-pound dumbbell, and I use 15 to 35-pound dumbbells. Now, let me say something about the weights, okay? Don't try something. You're not accomplishing one thing in the world if it's so heavy you can't get it up. You know, start with some light weights. There's some confusion over this. Technically, as you're holding your weight, you actually take a deep breath. You breathe out as you lift. A lot of people don't know that, and they get mixed up. But that's just a little free thing. Think about, in your own case, people, men and women, why wouldn't you want your muscles in good condition? Why? We've already learned that it's going to make your body more efficient in movement. Okay? Last section has to do with flexibility. God has designed these muscles to be fastened to your bones and to other muscles with tendons and ligaments. And that's one of our big king of injuries all the time. If you're not in good shape and you try to lift something real heavy, it may not be the muscle you rupture, although that's possible. It's more likely the thing that ties the bicep on to the bones, okay? The radius of the ulna. They're going to, did that impress you? Did I remember those words? Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure it was right. Anyway, but it ties on there. It's not just tied with a string, you see? And so we want to do a lot of stretching, okay? And by the way, there's a misnomer on stretching. A lot of people think, well, you stretch to warm up. No, you should move around. God has designed your tendons and ligaments and muscles to operate with heat, body heat. That's why if you're cold, you've got to be very careful about pulling muscles, tendons, and ligaments. So it's best to move around a little bit. You don't jump straight out of bed and try to put your hands flat on the floor. You actually should move around a little bit and get the heat in your body a little bit, then you can stretch. And that's not something a lot of people tell you, but it's free here, okay? All right, add some stretches, do all kind of stretches. We're not going to do them today, but I don't care if it's, don't cheat. And if you're going to stretch, make sure you hold the stretch. If I'm going to stretch the back of my legs, then I want to hold it. I don't want to bounce around, okay? If I'm going to stretch this way, I want to hold it for a count of maybe 5 or something. If you're stretching this way and you're stretching the opposite side, then you'd want to hold it nice and slow, okay? And that's all the way from your body to your neck. We don't even think about our neck. Put your head, I want everybody looking straight ahead. Lay your head over on your shoulder, right ear on your right shoulder. Move your head forward slowly. Now move it back. Do you feel any pain anywhere? Maybe, maybe not. Now I want you to do something different. Look straight to your right, not with your body, but with your head. Hold your head straight up. Lay your right ear on your back. Now shake your head yes slowly and see if it hurts, or hold it in there. So you have neck pains, all these kinds of things. We can do better. Let's see, we started at 2:30. We've gone an hour and a half, so we're okay. Let's see, we're going to go, when we come back in, we're going to cover some of the other things a lot quicker. And so my plan now is to see if we can start the film at 5. We'll get out at 5:30, which would put us right on the normal schedule. So right now we're going to take a break, go outside, walk around, take some deep breaths, walk a little bit, and get some water.